Welcome everybody to the OpenE webinar. Today is the July 22nd, 2010, and we're going to be working with the Dss V6 all console screen functions. I'm Todd Maxwell, Technical Sales, and with me is Rob Marcus in Sales. The webinar will be recorded. You will find demos and the recorded webinars at our webpage underneath. Later at the end, we'll go over where these links are so you can refer to them to other webinars as well. The presentation is muted to prevent background noise and to help you listen to the presentation without interference. Questions are always welcome. If you look on the right side of your screen of the NetViewer session window, you'll see a chat tab. Please click on the chat tab and be able to enter questions that I will be able to answer at the end of the webinar. So this will be helpful to you. So please remind yourselves to ask any questions that you wish concerning the webinar. So what's new with the Dss V6 in the builds 4452 and 4550? Well, we have initial wizard settings that we just implemented. This helps you to set the IP address, the passwords, the port numbers, and a few other things, and this will always continue to expand. We've implemented the new Samba and antivirus updates, and we now have support for volume replication with logical volumes up to 16 terabytes for NAS, iSCSI, and Fiber Channel. Support for iSCSI failover with logical volumes and many up to 16 terabytes as well. We now have support for the 8 gigabit fiber channel, QLogic HBAs, and Initiator and targets. Communication between failover nodes now using unicast as well as the multicast that was previously set. And we also have new settings for the default gateway in the console and the web GUI and static routing in the web GUI as well. And finally, we have some more of the capabilities of the ping node that many of you have been asking for. So now you can enter multiple ping nodes for the failover purposes. Volume replication tools under the console screen and Control-Alt-W, and we will go visit that as well during the webinar. And finally, we've updated the BrightStore 12.5 support and AppleTalk filing protocol framework NetaTalk 2.1. If you have more questions, visit our library. Here you'll find the knowledge base, data sheets, how-to resources, white papers, and case studies, all at www.open-g.com/library. If you'd like to have more information or you want to contact us, you'll have the ability to look at the libraries, the forums, email us at pre-sales@open-g.com, or just contact us from the link below with the contact link. This ends the first part of the presentation, and we'll set up a schedule on our online webpage for you to view new dates and themes. So we hope to see you then. Here we have the Dss V6. First thing we want to do is, in order to access the console, what we want to do is go to the setup into the GUI, click on Administrator. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see Remote Console Access. And what we want to do is enable it. And here the first thing you see is the allow IP address. And you can enter many IP addresses, but for right now, this purpose, we're going to leave it blank, which means any IP address can access the DSS from the console screen. So the default port is 22,222. You can change this to another port for if you have many DSS systems. And the password is set for 5 characters minimally. So we'll just enter this right now. Also, if you have some more information how to access it, because you're going to need to use PuTTY or some type of SSH program to access the console tools, if we click on the question mark here, you're going to find some information such as the default username is CLI for command line interface. And there's also the settings where you'll need to set up with it. Let's say you're using PuTTY. And if you notice here, if you click down, here's the PuTTY link. And here enables you to download PuTTY. So if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the PuTTY exe and install it on your workstation. Now once we have this set, we can now bring up the PuTTY program. We already have a preset program, but let's go over some of the settings of PuTTY. So we'll start up a new session. And here we'll see that PuTTY is loaded up. There we go. Now, one of the first things you want to do is set the IP address, which for this purposes, we have take the default IP address of the DSS server. We have the port 22,222. We're going to set it for SSH. Put a saved session name. Then you want to go to terminal keyboard settings and make sure that the VT100 Plus is enabled. Now you can save your settings and then load the DSS. Now if you remember, we put the default user name is CLI, so when it asks you for the username, all you want to do is put CLI in lowercase. Once this is enabled, then you'll be able to be presented with a password and enter the password which you provided in the GUI of the Dss V6. Now we're able to access the console screen as you see before us. So what you want to look for is, in case you're ever lost, is if you notice up here on the top, press F1 for help. Here you're going to find many of the functions that are normally used. So these are everything from being able to edit the static IP addresses with Control-Alt-N or Control-Alt-P to restore default factory administrator settings. And of course the rest of them that we'll go over. So for now, we're going to start off with one of the most widely used functions are the Control-Alt-T, which is the tools. So here you'll see some of the commands. The first we'll talk about is the ping command. So if I needed to verify that my network is functioning properly, that I can at least ping my gateway to see if the NICs are properly connected to the network, or if I have a proper subnet setting. So what it's going to do right now is to ping to that network device to see if it's accessing it. And here you see a reply. So this helps you to define if your network is accessing other networks and if it's communicating properly. DHCP is the same thing with DHCP ping. And then let's look at the hardware info. Here this is a review of all your hardware components in the system. Here you see the multiple cores and CPUs. Here you supported features, network controllers, RAID controllers, and if you had fiber channel controllers, and also the volumes that are associated, and if there's any tape devices or software RAIDs. So this will tell you, before you even access the GUI, what the system is actually reading out. Here's the memory information, what is being used, the physical free, the system cache, total system memory. Then time configuration. So you can set your time configuration here instead of going into the GUI, and you can preset all this so that way you are done in one swoop. So if you set the manual time, you can select your date, year, apply, and then set your time. And of course it creates a new certificate. Incomplete. You can also do that for your NTP server to set your NTP server. And here we have the set default. And we set it for continuous time adjustment. Language settings, well, it's pretty typical. We provide English, Dutch, Russian, Japanese, and Chinese. By default, we are using English, but you can change for those languages. Add-ons is a very interesting tool. Here, if let's say you have a Windows system and you have some disks or some NTFS volumes or FAT volumes, or even a USB flash stick of greater than 8 gig, or even want to use a USB drive to import the data. Now what I've done was I've created in the DSS a NAS share. So if I go to my shares, I've created a share called backup. In my backup share, we'll see that we've created a share right here on this system called backup. Currently backup, it's empty right now, and here is the share, and there's nothing in the share. So let's go back to the console for the add-ons tool. And what I have is a USB drive connected to the DSS server. I'm going to select the data import. It sees the disk system. Here we see the units, a 200 gig drive. It's asking me now, what destination do I want to back up? So select the import to basically import the data to the share. Here we're going to select backup. And then it will confirm it with the current date and time. Now let's look to see if our data is in there. And here we see our data that's now in the system. So let's go to the GUI to verify it as well. And there's our data. So the add-on tool is a very useful tool for basically importing your existing NTFS or FAT volumes from a Windows system. Modifier driver options. This is a very useful tool, especially if you wanted to specify some parameters for modifying the drivers of your NICs, but please reference to the hardware vendor on their specifications. Console lock and unlock. Be careful with this tool, but it can be used very useful for security to lock the console and also with passwords. You can also set this in the GUI as well. So you can go right into the DSS and set up administrator, and here you can lock the console with password.